Akhenaten is himself a huge topic within Egyptology. His reign sparked, defined, and almost entirely represented an entire era of Egyptian history. But this series is more about the lives and reigns of the 18th dynasty kings, so I'm not going to be getting too much into the wider Amarna period here. It is one of my favourite topics, so fear not, if I don't touch on something, I'll very likely get to it in a future video. Akhenaten was crowned Amenhotep Nefertari following the death of his father, Amenhotep III. Remember that the pharaohs weren't called by their birth names. Amenhotep III is what we call him, but he was called King Neb-Maatra, and so his son was King Nefertari. But young Amenhotep changed his personal name to Akhenaten sometime into his reign to reflect his dedication to the Aten, the god that was the physical aspect of the sun. His new name is translated variously, but I like Spirit of the Aten. No matter how you translate it, however, the message is the same. Akhenaten promises to be the Aten's agent on Earth. This he endeavoured to do, with a large number of profound and sweeping reforms to art, to language, and especially to religion. The Aten evolved under Akhenaten from a senior deity to a supreme one to, arguably, a sole one, although that's somewhat debatable. Most especially, worship of Amun was prohibited. Icons of the god and inscriptions bearing his name were defaced, his priesthood was disbanded, his temples repurposed. This was an overtly political move, since under Akhenaten's predecessors the priests of Amun had accrued tremendous power over the running of the state. In many ways, Akhenaten's reformations look a lot like those of Henry VIII of England, who after centuries of pious kings supporting the church, came to realise his bishops were enjoying power which, collectively at least, came close to his own as monarch. And like Henry VIII, Akhenaten's motivations were much more complex than simply wanting to feel secure in his kingship. I, for example, tend to think that Akhenaten was motivated in part by sincere religious devotion, but it's impossible to know for certain. One way that Akhenaten took power from the priesthood was to make himself and his queen, Nefertiti, the entirety of the Aten priesthood. Now, logistically there must have been other priests of the Aten, certainly there were temples, and worship of other gods eventually came to be prescribed completely, so everyday citizens needed some contact with the divine. But Akhenaten was the intercessor, he alone had the ear of God. In some places, such as the boundary stele that marked the borders of the city of Akhenaten, the king proclaimed himself the son of Aten. I have my own thoughts about that for another time, but I believe he might have been literally telling the truth when he said that. The Aten soon stopped being depicted as anything other than the solar orb, and stopped being written anything other than phonetically, as a king's name would be written. And like a king, the Aten would be named within a cartouche. No god had ever enjoyed this privilege, unless that god's name had been part of a pharaoh's name. 2 cartouches, like a king's birth and regnal names. These read, "The living Horus, the sun upon the 2 horizons, rejoicing in the horizon," and "named as the sun, which is the Aten." By the way, not everyone would agree with my translation there, particularly the second cartouche, but I stand by it for now. Either way, presenting the Aten's name and titles like this in paired cartouches is a very strong message. It says, think of God as your king. The cartouches bearing Akhenaten's and Nefertiti's names, yes, she got a cartouche too, are often shown nearby, much smaller. Akhenaten is a strange figure in modern eyes. To some, he's the ultimate egotist, promoting his own supremacy as a prophet, perhaps even a living god. To others, he is strangely humble for a king, prostrating himself as he is burdened by being God's only legitimate servant, taking for himself only the majesty he needs to rule effectively. But how effective was Akhenaten as a ruler? Well, reports are mixed. To some, he seemed far more interested in his personal project of Akhenaten, the new capital city he ordered built in his 5th regnal year, rather than the wider issue of ruling Egypt and its imperial dominions. During his reign, the Hittite Empire was expanding, and so Egypt stood to lose vassals to the Hittites if it did not put its chariots where its mouth was. Yet, as far as all evidence indicates, Akhenaten lost some interest in this situation a few years into his reign. And we know he was aware of the situation because he wrote a caustic reply to one vassal ruler, complaining about how much the vassal wrote begging for help, which isn't great overlording. Even so, Egypt's wider empire maintained its general shape. What this tells me is that Akhenaten must have upheld a fair few of those old treaties. We do know of one successful military campaign that he ordered, though the king himself was not part of it, wherein Akhenaten had his viceroy of Kush protect settlements coming under attack from Nubian raiders. We also know that Akhenaten avoided both losing swathes of territory to the Hittites and going to war against them, so he was either skilled, very lucky, or a little bit of both. We don't know much about his later reign, but there is evidence of a plague that did considerable harm to Egypt and its surrounding nations. But we do know that after 17 ambitious years of rule, Akhenaten died, leaving his throne to... well, that's a whole thing. A thing for my next video. Thanks for watching. This is the beginning of the last part of my 18th Dynasty series, so once this next few videos are done, let me know if there are any other dynasties or periods you'd want me to cover. If you had a good time, why not extend one of your rays to the like button and prod it with an ank. The satraps, kings and governors writing to me hoping I'll get off my high horse and actually do something are my backers at patreon.com/armchairegypt, and I promise I'll get to it eventually. Until next time, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, life, prosperity and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.